Welcome to the Chapter 1 podcast, your inside look at the people powering Charlotte's business scene. Real stories, real entrepreneurs right here in the Queen City. We're here with Matt Forsyth with Building Block Insurance Group.
That's it.
And I kept saying blocks before we started, so I'm glad I got that right. But Matt, we're glad to have you here. And let's start with Chapter 1. How did you make your way to the Queen City?
Well, yeah, thanks for having me. So I'm originally from Orange County, California.
Okay.
So it was about 12 years ago. I moved to Charlotte. My cousin owned a boat dealership, and I was recovering from spine surgery. I hadn't worked for almost 2 years.
Oh, wow.
And he told me to come out here and help me sell boats. So he'd been trying to get me out here for a number of years, and finally it was the right time. But I got out here, and he's like, I don't really need help selling boats. How about you run the service department? I'm like, I don't know how to do that. But anyway, was there for about a year and a half, and working with family doesn't always work out. So I had to change courses and pivot. But that's how I came here to Charlotte area.
Awesome. So tell me about like more of the professional journey. So was your first job doing what you're doing now? Were you in Building Block then, or like what was your first job? Let's start there.
So I actually started delivering pizzas for Domino's.
Heck yeah.
I was still in high school. Had a truck, and I was 18 my senior year, so they let you deliver pizza. So I was doing that for a while. And then I got into selling. I worked for Circuit City, so that was my first sales job. Sold computers there, and I actually got headhunted from Circuit City to Gateway Computers. So I don't know if you remember the cow spotted box, but the Gateway Computers. I worked there, opened the store in the city I lived in, opened it and closed it. So we all got laid off 5 years later when there was the whole e-machine reverse buyout. So from there, I went and sold diamonds for Robbins Brothers. So engagement rings and loose diamonds, did that for a couple of years. So I just been kind of doing a lot of sales jobs off and on. And then I was running a lumber company doing all the sales and marketing and everything like that for a specialty lumber company called Timbersill, which is actually based out of here. But I was in California. I did the West Coast distribution. And did that up until when I had a neck injury, so I had surgery. So during the recovery time of my surgery, the company actually went out of business.
Wow. So
after surgery, I came back to no job. And then that ended up how my cousin offered me a job out here in Charlotte. So we went out here, and so, yeah, it's been over a decade.
Okay, and then you found your way eventually to what you're doing now, which is insurance. What was that transition like from what you were doing before to where you're at now?
Yeah, so that was interesting. After the boat dealership didn't work out, I was kind of like in a city I didn't know and no plan. So I took basically the first job I could get, first sales job I could get, which was with CPI Security. Hated it. Right? It was like the worst sales job. It paid the bills, but it was no fun.
Yeah.
And I had a roommate at the time, and he had started doing insurance. So final expense, life insurance. He was doing pretty well at it. He brought me into that, and I did that for about 8-9 years.
Oh, wow.
I built a team. I was doing pretty well at that. I had a team of 24 people under me, good overrides. With the life insurance business, it's all about building a team and overrides. And then the company got bought out, and there was a technicality which allowed them to take my overrides away. And so I went basically to strictly what I sold again. And they wanted me to rebuild a team, and I didn't trust the system no longer. So I pivoted. I talked to my neighbor who owned Building Block Insurance Group. And I really wasn't looking to work with him. I was looking for some advice. And he basically said, you can come on board with us, and there's not going to be a salary involved, but it might take a little bit of time to rebuild the book of business. So I did that. I went and got my, property and casualty license.
Wow.
Which is like 40 hours, and I did it in a week and took the class, passed it, and everything like that real quick. And then I just basically went through my phone, contacted everybody I know, and said, hey, I'm doing home and auto now. Let's do your home and auto. And that's kind of how it's been a year and a half, about a year and a half.
Wow. So it's funny because it sounds like you kind of built things up in a bunch of different spaces and then just kept moving to the next one and you've kind of built it up again.
Yeah.
For those situations where you're doing that, I mean, obviously this last time you mentioned just kind of going through your phone. How was it that you started acquiring people? Was it always just word of mouth and networking and talking to people? Have you ever explored any kind of marketing? Like how did you grow those things?
So I've been always good at making customers become friends.
Yeah.
And I got thrust into running the service department at the boat dealership. And they were used to having a new service manager like every 6 weeks because the boat dealership was a little bit of chaos.
Mm.
And I brought some stability to that, and I became friends with basically the bulk of the customers. And so that became my new friend group, was the people that I was helping. Even after I left the boat dealership, I still retained all the friends. So that was where like my new friend group started from.
Mm-hmm.
And I just built on that. And then I didn't really need to call upon them for any reason as far as work-wise for almost a decade. So I got to the point where like I needed to. I'm not one that loves to reach out to friends and say, hey, will you do business with me?
Yeah.
But
it's always hard.
Yeah, so I did. And luckily most people were like, yeah, if you can, get same price or lower, let's go.
Yeah.
And luckily I'm with Erie Insurance. So Erie generally has the lowest prices in North Carolina for home and auto. If you have a good driving record and homeowners claim record,
Mm-hmm.
if you have a good record, they're going to be the lowest price. So it was pretty easy. I was able to beat almost everybody's current rates and got, the bulk of them that went through. It was odd because like I grew up in California.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went through my phone and I had 90 names.
Jeez.
Just in this area that I felt confident enough to call. And from those 90 names, I got just over 30. And then that was kind of what started my business. And then got in the networking group. And that kind of helped also like avoid the whole prospecting aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, between all the networking you've done and just all the different teams that you've kind of built up, do you have any stories of just situations you thought you'd never be in, or just maybe not horror stories, but just moments where you were like, this is not how I expected this to go?
Well, yeah. So I was never a big fan of networking.
No.
I had been to a lot of networking events, and I'm like a social person, so I was really good at meeting people.
Mm-hmm.
But I had never gotten any business out of a networking group ever.
Mm-hmm.
So when I started at Building Block, the owners were like, you need to try this thing called BNI. And I'm like, I'm good. I'm good. I don't want to do it. I don't need any more friends. Right. That's basically what I saw networking as a way to get friends. So they basically forced me to do it because they're like, you're starting this new avenue and we want to set you up for success. So they set me up with this new BNI group. I got into that. I didn't want to be there. And long story short, it was a new group. So they were looking for people to be in leadership. And I tried to pick the leadership position with the least amount of responsibility. I picked the wrong one. So I ended up with more responsibility than I wanted. And I ended up becoming what they call the vice president, who's like basically in charge of the chapter.
Yeah.
And I'm like the kind of person that if I'm going to take on something, I'm going to go full blast.
Sure.
And so that's what I did is we had a really electric group as far as like the camaraderie. Mm-hmm. Everybody was really trying to help each other. And I was like, man, this is something special. So I put a lot of effort into it, more than I think I was expecting to, or anybody expected me to. And we really tried to hold everybody accountable, because with BNI, it's like a referral-based group where they're like incentivized to, help pass business across.
Yeah.
But I would say like half the people in the group were doing it. And then the other half were getting referrals, but not really giving. And so as being in charge of who basically, the way they work it is there's 5 people that vote on who gets renewed. So we decided as the 5 of us that we weren't going to renew the people that weren't participating. So what we did was we dwindled it down, and as we did that, the results started going up. But BNI didn't like that we weren't renewing everybody.
They weren't getting the paychecks for people being a part of the
Right.
chapter. Yeah.
Even though we were the #1 chapter in the entire state,
Mm.
they didn't like that we weren't just like letting everybody know.
Yeah.
So come to your point where, like, did you ever get into a situation where you didn't think you'd be in? Is we had our like 1-year anniversary and this like celebration of success. And then like 2 hours later, they terminated my contract and I was kicked out of BNI because they said I was pushing people away from BNI. And then within like a matter of a couple hours, the whole chapter seemingly quit.
Oh my goodness.
And so I ended up, everybody was like, we're leaving, we're going to follow you. And I was never an intention to like lead a new group. So now we have Free to Network. Everybody basically that we wanted to come with us, all the A players
Yeah.
from the BNI came with us. And now we have Free to Network, which meets at the same place. It's very similar, but it's totally different, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like it has some similarities where like there's 1 seat per category. And that's referral oriented, but it's different. Like we do a couple different formats. Like we do a member tip of the week. We never did that before.
Yeah.
And, so we created an app. Everything that we had good from the old system we kept, and everything we didn't like we got rid of. And so now it's like the group created the group, and it's really working well.
That's such a wild story to get to where you're at now. I mean, and it sounds like a lot of it kind of just fell into you. Like it wasn't like your plan to go and start a new networking group. But now that you find yourself here, just with Free to Network and with what you're doing with insurance, what would you say is the thing that you enjoy most about all of that? Like, is there something that you love most about all the things that you're into right now?
Well, as far as like all the things I'm into,
Sure.
It's tough. Like we got a lot of what do they call that? Things in the fire or whatever.
Pans in the fire, yeah.
My wife's got this boutique business that we're doing, and that kind of consumes a lot of our time.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Free to Network is kind of eliminated my need to prospect, so it's bringing me business. So that frees up time to focus on Free to Network, which is like it's giving me something to allow me have more time to make it better. So I am able to put more time into that than I would have been able if I needed to, make cold calls and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But really, like, I think the thing I like the most is when people are just telling me how it's working.
Yeah.
Like I'm getting so much business out of this networking group. It's like nothing I've ever been a part of. I do almost get more excited about hearing other people having success from the group than like I do from my own sales.
Yeah. What does the process look like? Like if somebody was interested, somebody's watching this and it's like, oh man, I haven't really felt comfortable with these other networking events. That sounds great. What is the process? How does somebody get plugged into that?
So as long as your seat's not taken, like that category, so you go to freetonetwork.org and you can look at the members. And if your seat's open, you can fill out the request form, fill it out, come. And so to be a part of the group, you have to come to a minimum of three meetings. And then that way we can kind of vet you. You can decide if it's something you want to be a part of. Like there is attendance requirements, right? Like you got to come every week.
Sure.
So we really want to make sure that we're not bringing anybody in that's just then going to drop the ball. Yeah. So that would be how you do it. You go to freetonetwork.org, fill out the request to come visit, you come to 3 meetings, and then we'll vote as a group on if you're a right fit. So that's kind of how it works.
Awesome. And it's kind of a last wrap-up question. If you were able to talk to younger you, or maybe somebody watching who's kind of right there on the edge of wanting to to jump into sales or entrepreneurship or starting a networking group, what kind of advice would you give them or your younger self?
The more effort you put into it, the better it's going to be. I was a big sales CD kind of listener back in the 90s and 2000. I liked Earl Nightingale, and he always said that like the effort you put in is always going to the universe is going to give it back to you the same way. So yeah, just whatever you want to do, just try as hard as you can.
Awesome. Well, that was Matt Forsyth with Building Block Insurance and also free to network, as we found out. So we loved having you on. Thank you so much, Matt. And as always, I am Greg Prinz, and this is the Chapter One Podcast.